Hello fellow bird nerds, welcome back to another training tutorial where today I'm going to show you how to teach your bird to stick out their tongue. This is a highly requested video ever since everybody saw Kipling doing this adorable behaviour, so I thought let's put some clips together to show you how to train it, and it's actually not as hard as it might look. So I'm going to talk you through some of the steps and some of the things to think about, but Kipling picked it up in maybe 1 or 2 sessions. I think it's easier for sort of tonguey, licky birds like conures, but that's not to say that any other type of parrot can't learn it. It might just take a little bit longer. Now this is a bit of a novelty behaviour, it's a bit of fun, it's a little bit silly, but it does have a few health benefits. When your bird sticks out their tongue, of course you can check their tongue health, make sure it's looking a-okay, and I do have a whole video about tongue anatomy if you'd like to learn more about your parrot's tongue, so do check that out after this video. But you can also check the back of your bird's mouth. This is something I've done a lot. I've taken a lot of pictures of my bird's cranial papillae, and that needs to be nice and pink and sharp and pointy. That means that your bird is healthy. If not, it might mean that there's a problem. And for more information on that, I have my video on some cool anatomy features of parrots, so do check out that video. I'll have a couple of things down in the description. There'll also be some cards at the top that you can click on afterwards for more information about what's going on inside your bird's mouth and what you might find in there. And I do find that taking some pictures is a really good way of seeing that. So, how to do that is by training your bird to stick out their tongue. So here is how I did that. Now I started with Kipling because he is a very licky conure. Of course, as you probably know on my channel, he's not a huge fan of being on film like this, otherwise he would be with me. But I'm going to show you some clips of what I did to train that behaviour. I found that this behaviour was easiest to train when the bird is in the cage, so you have the bars in the way, just in case they get a bit too excited with their beak and they try and bite you. Obviously we don't want that, even if it is out of curiosity. So the way that I did this is I approached Kipling in the cage and I picked a cue that was very different to anything else, which was kind of like a thumbs up, but the thumb isn't all the way up. So my thumb is just kind of resting on top of my fingers in a fist shape, and with that I would wiggle my thumb up and down. This is very different because I didn't want to use my fingers, because when I wave my finger like this, that is for the birds to wave at me. Or if I do my finger like this, that's for Charlie to roll over. So I wanted to pick something quite different to what my birds already know. So we went for the sort of thumb on the fist and then wriggling that. And I approached Kipling in the cage doing this. And this kind of evokes curiosity with a lot of birds, and also they might think that you're coming up with a treat. So naturally they're going to open their beak to be like, insert the goodness, insert the treats into my mouth. And at that moment I said good, and I gave him a treat. So him opening his mouth was the first step for us. If your bird is a little bit unsure, you can reinforce with the tiniest little beak opens. Kipling is very expressive with his beak, so it's really easy to train this behaviour with him. He opened his beak nice and wide when I came in, but as I said, if your bird is not quite as curious, you break the behaviour down into the tiniest steps, so just a little bit of a beak open, and they can have a treat for that. And you can gradually increase the approximations where your bird opens its beak a little bit more each time. I also like training this through the bars because it gives your bird an opportunity to retreat from this if they don't want to participate, but also, as I said, if they do get a little bit curious about your thumb, we don't want anybody getting hurt. We want the thumb to be outside of the cage. You don't want to be actually touching your bird's beak in any way. We want to just elicit that response of what have you got there, and over sessions you are going to reinforce them opening their mouth a little bit more. It's important as well not to reinforce any aggression or really enthusiastic beak opening or lunging towards the bars. You need to be quite precise with the way that you say good and offer your treats, so that you're reinforcing the right kind of behaviours. We don't want them lunging and trying to bite and anything like that with the open beak. You need to have a calm and curious open beak for this. And to be perfectly honest, it really is as simple as that. You start reinforcing for them opening their beak wider and wider, and as you come in with that thumb, they're naturally going to be trying to grasp you with their tongue, and again you can reinforce for the smallest tongue approximations. But as they start to poke out their tongue, again we're going to say good and give them treats, because that's what we're looking for. And again, when birds take treats, they often take it with their beak and their tongue because they have bones in their tongue to manipulate objects. So most parrots will go in with the beak open first, and then they'll start leaning out with their tongue, because the tongue almost acts like a thumb almost, because it can grasp and it's a bit more sort of prehensile, so to speak. Like I said, although Kipling picked this up really quickly, your bird might take a bit longer. That's fine. There is no rush with training this behaviour, but it isn't as complex as it looks. It is a case of evoking them, presenting this behaviour of opening beaks and sticking their tongue out because they think you have a treat or they're curious about your wiggling fingers. Don't forget to watch out for your bird's sort of emotional state when they're opening their beak. We don't want any angry beaks or anything like that. We want calm and curious beaks when we are reinforcing, and over time just working up to them opening it wider and sticking that tongue out. And that's basically it. I would love to know if you're going to try this with your bird. It is a really silly behaviour, but it is probably my favourite behaviour that Kipling knows because it's adorable. And he is so good at really sticking his tongue out as far as he can when we do it out of the cage. Because once you've trained it through the cage bars, you then start to do it out of the cage and see how your bird responds. And it was a really easy transition for Kipling. He didn't try and lunge at my fingers or my thumb or anything like that. He understood the cue. And that's where it's really important to make sure your bird understands the cue when you are trying to move it into a different location, like outside of the cage. Would you like to see any other training tutorials on my channel? Please do let me know in the comments, as I would love to speak to you. But from me and the flock, thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.